Welcome back to Running Back on the Raptors Republic Network. I'm your host Kyle Ramran, joined by my boy Zulfi Shake over there. Zulfi, how you doing? How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. I'm excited to talk Raptors basketball. I'm excited to be the B side. I don't know how to say the B side, but you're hosting today. I kind of could get a different perspective on things, so I think it should be fun for us to switch it up a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit opposite day, not used to here. We are missing Cody Wallace today, but he's off covering a 9:05 game, doing his thing over there. So we wish him luck over there, and we hopefully will see him next week. But let's get ready. Let's get right into it. Let's recap the recent weeks, I should say. And Raptors have been winning in these last few weeks. So the week before, when we weren't here, they beat the Warriors, the Celtics, and they lost to the Bucks. And then this recent week, they won. They went 3-0 this week, and they stand at 13 and 32 right now. They moved up a spot from the last week to 13th. They beat the Magic and beat the Hawks back to back. So let's quickly get into the recap here. What did you notice from this, Zolfi, from this week? Anything stand out to you from the Raptors at all besides them winning?
Yeah, like you said, winning. They've won 5 of their last 6 over the last 2 weeks, basically since Immanuel Quickley's been out, and we're going to talk on that in a second. I'm pretty sure. They won 3 in a row, first time this season, and Darko Rajakovic did confirm no pizza party for winning. It is the first time they've won 3 in a row since that February stretch last season, which is kind of crazy, but that just speaks to where this team is at. And then 5 out of 6 is also the first time under Darko Rajakovic. So it's good. Like, I think winning is fun, and we can talk about it in a second of like what I mean by it's good, because some people will have a different take on what that is and what the winning means for this team. But I think the biggest thing that we have to talk about coming from this stretch is the defense. Over the last 6 games, basically, and again, since Immanuel Quickley's been out, the Raptors have the 3rd best defensive rating. It's 106.4. Like, they have been just putting in work on the defensive side. And yes, you can argue that the Atlanta Hawks maybe aren't the best offensive team. Orlando, obviously, this week is one of the worst offensive teams in the league. But still, doing it over a 2-week span of having basically an elite defense, having contributions all around. Guys like RJ Barrett are looking more engaged on that end. Scotty Barnes is kind of looking like that all-world talent that we're used to seeing a lot of last season before his injury and during that all-star stretch. So I think that's been super impressive. And you really want to see if that's something that can come out of this stretch of games, is a longer lasting kind of sustainability with that type of play on the defensive end.
No, exactly. Too. That's something I wanted to touch about too in the week for the Warriors game last week too. When I was watching it, Davion Mitchell, he didn't have a huge impact on the offensive end, but his defense alone on Steph Curry was fantastic that whole game. The whole game, I didn't want to nitpick on him too hard because a lot of people are like, oh, he's not doing anything on the floor. But if you really looked at it, he cost Steph Curry some crucial turnovers in the clutch to at least force poke some loose balls, and this defense has just been overall great from the team. And I want to hear from those people that are saying, fire Darko, fire Darko. We went on that little bit of a losing streak and they were calling for his head. But overall, the team has been flowing. And something again I noticed in the Warriors game too, Scotty playing out of that mid post, making plays from the mid post, getting those fadeaways, those mid-range jumpers. It seems like he's getting more comfortable playing down low there or playing in sort of that mid post position. I don't know if you noticed it too. He was just cooking from there the whole game.
Yeah, I think that's become his go-to counter, right? Like, we talked about it. I think Samson has mentioned it a bunch before. Like, when Scotty's getting switched and there's bigs in front of him in the past, he wasn't exactly sure how to go about it. And now you can just counter that with just attacking in the mid post with their turnaround, especially. I think last night after the win against the Hawks, Chris Boucher basically said his mid-range, Scotty Barnes' mid-range game is unstoppable right now. And it truly is. Scotty has talked a lot about it recently, about that being one of his comfortable spots, especially in these last couple of games. He's really kind of fallen in love with it. And it's becoming a really good counter for him to have. Like, you still want to see him get downhill and get to the rim at a good rate, which he is trying to find ways to do. But knowing he has a counter that he can reliably kind of go back to when he needs to, especially when he's getting walled up, is awesome to see. And I think it's gone to the point where, like, it's not just something he's trying or something that he's working on. It is very much a part of his game now, or at least it has been these last couple of days, which has been awesome to see. And I want to go back to Davion Mitchell, because I think he is a guy who's a bit of an unsung hero during this stretch. And I have a question I'm going to toss to you off of that. But, like, you said it yourself, Steph Curry, he had like 20-something points in that game, sure, but he was like 7 of 17.
Yeah.
Like, he was not efficient. Trae Young has been basically in a torture chamber these last 2 games with Davion Mitchell just hounding him the entire time. And it has not been easy for him. Like, yes, he can get to his spots at times, and yes, Trae Young is still a really impactful player, especially as a passer. But when things aren't easy for them, it's a lot more exhausting. And I think that's been a big part of what the Raptors have been able to accomplish. And I guess the question coming out of it is, like, what do you do if Immanuel Quickley comes back? mind you, the $35 million starting point guard who you're very much invested in, and then the defense just completely craps the bed again. Like what are you gonna do? Like, is that something that you just have to live with and figure out a way around? Or like you see a guy like Davion Mitchell who's not a star. He doesn't have the offensive ceiling as an Immanuel Quickley has, but like look at everything he's offering you as a defender. Mind you, at a much lower cost, he is a restricted free agent and you can re-sign him, but I'm assuming it's not going to cost $35 million. Like I'm not here to say that Immanuel Quickley is not going to be your starting point guard moving forward. It's just there has to be some kind of thought put into this idea that this defense has been just balling lately, and then if you put Immanuel Quickley back in, you're assuming it's not going to hold up the same way it is with Davion Mitchell there.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's actually a really tough question because I don't even you don't even think about these things when it's in the moment. But if I'm looking at these games too, when Davion Mitchell's in, you have Steph Curry 9 for 17 from the field, 4 turnovers, plus that costly turnover in the clutch that was caused by Davion Mitchell. And then Trae Young 2 for 8 from 3. He's been playing fantastic defense. But then again, it's like I can't say, oh, we should just get rid of Immanuel Quickley because we paid him so much money. But is he about to be the world's most expensive six man? Because
that is definitely in the future. That is a possibility. Like you already heard, like Michael Grange had a story this week heading into the trade deadline about like the only untouchables on this roster are Grady Dick and Scotty Barnes. That is a very interesting thing to say after you signed a guy to a 5-year deal. Like it's not a max deal or anything like that. It's $35 million a year, but like you don't sign a guy to that and then just be like, oh yeah, we're willing to get rid of him. That's not usually how that goes. But it just speaks to the fluidity of this roster and nothing being set in stone beyond by the reporting beyond Scotty Barnes and Grady Dick. So it's interesting because you have to have that conversation. Eventually the numbers are going to tell a story. And right now, like it's a small sample size because Quickley, and this is the biggest caveat to all this, he has been hurt. It's been facing a lot of injuries. He's only played 9 games. So we're halfway through the season and the guy hasn't played 10 games yet. So that, like, to be fair to him, injuries do suck and it's not like you come back at 100% every time. So he's played around 256 minutes. The offensive rating is around 112. The defensive rating is 122. So the biggest thing that I'm seeing here is when he's not on the floor, which is obviously a lot more minutes because of his injuries, the offensive rating isn't all that different. It's worse, but by like a point. But the defensive rating when Immanuel Quickley is not on the floor is about 8 points better. So if you're telling me that the offense is more or less the same when he's not out there, but the defense is significantly better, well then that's not the best case for him to be on the floor as much. You know what I mean? So like they have to either figure something out. Either Immanuel Quickley has to try just not being such a negative on defense, which I don't think it's all his fault. Honestly, he's probably not even the worst defender out of RJ Barrett, Grady Dick, and him as individual defenders. It's just the positions he's in and this Raptors style of defense. But then if he's not able to keep up defensively, he's got to be like that much more of a positive on offense, which is kind of why the Raptors have been so enamored with him when they brought him in. Masai said he sees him and Scotty as a dream pairing, but then you really need to see the numbers backing that up. If he can't be that much of an exponential positive on offense, and then he's really giving it back on defense, well, then you're stuck in a really tough situation paying this guy $35 million a year.
Yeah, what's crazy too is I'm looking at this Atlanta Hawks box score too. Davion Mitchell only had 2 points, but he was a plus 17. Like
they're winning his minutes.
He's I'm telling you, he's such an impressive player, and I don't want to harp on Quickley get down on him because I know he's been injured and we don't have a big enough sample size yet. But for me, at least, and I know we've talked about it here on the show sometimes too, like I don't know if he'll be the point guard of the future, but I didn't expect the talks to be happening this early at least. So maybe we'll give him the benefit of the doubt and let him play more than 10 games and see where the team goes from there. See if they find a way to not make him such a big, huge transparency on defense, I should say, or whatever. But I don't know. I don't want to harp on him yet and say, we got to figure out something about this issue. But the numbers are a bit telling though right now, and it is a little bit scary because he is our starting point guard. But I don't know. I don't want to call for the trades yet or say what we do. I say bigger sample size, and then we go from there.
Yeah, I think the big thing with Quickley that I kind of want my point to be, my point isn't that he's done. He doesn't have any room to grow. He's not that old. He's 24, 25, I think. Like my big thing with Quickley is there's a glaring weakness there that is evident through the numbers, albeit the sample size isn't as large as it could be. Like you have to find a way, like point blank as a starting point guard, like he has to find a way to mitigate that. Whether it's by becoming a better defender in this style or in this scheme, not gambling as much, whatever the case is, or it's your offense needs to make up for that by more of a degree than it has. Because right now they're basically net even on offense when he's on and off. which is just not what you want with your starting point guard. Like
Mhm.
truthfully, that's just not. So like that's the thing. Like Emmanuel Quickley, there's a space where you need to kind of figure this out, and that's the space.
Mhm. And like the reason why we're even having this conversation in the first place is because the Raptors have been winning. I think
Yeah.
I believe they're 5-1 in these last 2 weeks. They've beaten some competitive teams. These aren't just bums they're beating. And this is where the discussion starts happening amongst the Raptors fan base. Is this a good thing or is this a bad thing? And from my point of view, at least, it's so hard to say, yeah, winning is a bad thing. This is horrible. I don't want this because I can't come out and be like, yeah, we should lose these games. But it bothers me because if we do start winning, why did, like, again, we started it so late now. So if we keep it up and then somehow sneak our way into the play-in and lose, we're right back in the purgatory where we were before, where we weren't good enough for the lottery, but we weren't bad enough to not make the playoffs. But then you can't have a season this bad and then not at least have a top 7 pick. So it's so many different topics floating around. And what's your takes on the winning so far?
Yeah. Look, so what I'll start with is like we just can't talk in absolutes, right?
Mhm,
So like if they make the play in, that doesn't mean they're not going to potentially get a lottery pick. We saw it with the Atlanta Hawks. They were, I think, the 10th seed. They got the first overall pick. Is that common? No. But my point is you can't talk in absolutes. This is all probability and percentages and nothing is 100%. So
mhm,
starting there. But I think the big thing I want to touch on when it comes to this whole tank versus this winning stretch thing is like the Raptors have to really sit down and think about like how long do we plan on being a lottery bound team?
mhm,
Because if this is what you are thinking is your only shot at a top three, top five pick for the next 5, 6 years, then there's a real conversation about like you need to commit to this. You need to find ways to lose and put yourself in the best position. But if you think you're going to be in this situation where you're picking like 5, 6, 7 for the next 2 to 3 years, and that's based on evaluation and what you think of your own roster and your talented players, then maybe it's not as much urgency. Yes, Cooper Fleck is a generational talent, and would I probably be kind of trying to secure a spot to get him? Absolutely. But if you see a Cooper Flag not all that different than an AJ Dybonta next year or the Boozer twins in next year's draft, well, then maybe you're not so pressed on giving up these important development reps and this stretch of success that you're having. Maybe seeing how a Scotty Barnes takes over as the defender and all-world player. These last 3 games, he's basically playing that all-star level. Again, he's averaging over 20 points right now. If you think that's more important than getting those reps, then maybe that 2 or 4 or 5% chance extra as the number one overall pick, that's fine if that's what you think your team is going to be in this position a couple years. But if you think this is your only chance, then maybe it does make sense to really sit these guys down. So I think that's what it comes down to. Like, if you think you're going to be lottery bound for a while, the conversation shifts, right? Because you're going to put yourself in positions close to this, and then maybe the lottery odd, the ping pong balls go your way. But if you think, hey, this is our one shot at that difference maker, and we don't plan on being back here for the next couple of seasons, then we really have to commit to this. The Warriors did it a couple of years ago, going after James Wiseman. They had all those injuries to Steph, to Draymond, and those guys, and they knew that, like, hey, once we're healthy, we're not going to be back here. So we may as well go for it. Was James Wiseman that ultimate difference maker? No. But they still put themselves in a position to do it. I could see the New Orleans Pelicans being that way. They're a team right now that could honestly go both ways. If they decide to stick with Zion, they bring back Brandon Ingram, but right now they put themselves in a position to get a really talented player, whether it be a Dylan Harper, Cooper Flag, or whatever, then they're just like, okay, we're going to run it back and we're going to be a playoff team. But in the same breath, they could be like, hey, we're just going to strip this all down. The only people that are untouchable are like Trey Murphy and a couple other guys are like Yves Misi. Well, then they start over and they've really committed to this tank as well. They're kind of in the same boat. So that's what I mean. Like, you really have to ask yourself, as the Raptors organization, do you plan on being here a while? If you do, then maybe the urgency isn't there to kind of give up these developmental reps. But if you think this is your one shot, then the conversation is very different. And like you said, Kyle, they have to maybe be strategic about which games they're winning and how they're going about it.
exactly too. And it's kind of, you kind of touched on another thing I wanted to talk about too in this episode as well. Like, we got to sit down and kind of choose what we want to do, right now. Because Bruce Brown came out the other day and said, I love Toronto. I want to stay here. Like, it's a great city, whatever. Fantastic that Bruce wants to stay here, right? But Bruce is a guy, like, he played great these last few games. Like, against the Hawks, he had 18 points, 8 for 12 from the field. He played great. But he's the type of guy that is a fantastic player on a contending team. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like as much as he wants to stay here, we really can't provide anything for him unless we are in a win now playoff type mode. And I feel like he doesn't really bring anything to us aside from what we can get from him for trading from him. So it's like we need to figure out what we're really doing here. Because as much as I want Bruce to stay, I feel like we have to move someone like him because the good is more. We can get more from trading him than actually keeping him here, and that's a compliment to him as a player because he complements so many contending teams right now. He could help out the Lakers. He could help out whoever else that wants to win now mode. And I feel like the Raptors really truly got to sit down and be like, okay, who do we have on our team that we can get rid of and get something good back to? Like a Chris Boucher, for example. Chris Boucher has been here, been in the league for what 7, 8 years now. He's been on the team for most of those years. And just how well he's been playing now too. I feel like again we can get something good back for Boucher right now than having him kind of just his talents just kind of go to waste. I don't want to like that's the worst possible word I could use, but we're not in a position to win now. Right now, he's in his seventh, 8th year. And at that point, at a point in your NBA career, you want to get on a team where I'm competing. I want to win. I want to win something now. So again, we have to pick that direction. Okay, we're rebuilding. We need to get rid of certain guys on our team because again, we can't do anything for them. Guys like this, we really can't help because we're not in a win now mode. And I feel like again, it just comes back to your point. Like we really got to sit down and be like, okay, we want to be bad for these many years. Because if it's like we just want to be bad for maybe this year, next year, then I guess you can make the excuse of okay, maybe let's keep Bruce, maybe let's keep Boucher. But if it's going to be a while for rebuilding, we shouldn't have these guys on the team. And that's not a detriment to their level of play. It's just how good they are.
Hey man, they've been winning us games lately. This
Yeah,
bench
they
has been
have been.
winning games, so it's like, hey, if you guys are winning us all these games, we want you to stick around if we want to
Hmm.
take. So I think that's interesting in and of itself too. But like with guys like Bruce and Chris specifically, like they're expiring contracts.
Yeah.
Like, what is the likelihood that they resign? Like there's a chance, yeah, and they're saying the right things, and I know they probably mean some of that. But at the end of the day, like there's a market value for these
Yeah.
guys, and whether the Raptors are able to match it or not is not a certainty. Whether they want to match it or not is not a certainty. Like it looks okay right now, but eventually, like if you have these guys signed, well then where are those minutes going? Like, what if you want to get the rookies more minutes? It's nice during trade season to get these vets some more time, but towards the back half of the season, that's taking away reps away from a guy like Jonathan Mobo, who's been
Yep.
doing a lot of work in the G League. Some other guys that you might want to see more, whether it's Jacoby Walter or Jamison Battle and whatnot. And that's not to say that these guys didn't earn their minutes as vets. They did. They've been playing awesome lately, but those conversations start happening, and you're like, well, do we really need Bruce Brown at that price tag, whatever it may be? And does he want to be here? Like he's saying he does, but in the offseason, if the Raptors aren't giving him the money that he wants and another team is with a more competitive environment, well, then Toronto just lost him for nothing.
Yeah.
And you traded Pascal Siakam to get Bruce Brown. And if you lose him for nothing, that is not a good look. Like
Yeah.
you need something out of that, which is why I'm saying these guys are expiring players. So to your point, like I think it makes sense to get some value as risking getting no value out of it. And sure, you could just swallow it. You're a team that has the flexibility to do that, but it still probably isn't the move you want to make as a front office.
No, I think that's the worst. Literally losing Bruce Brown for nothing is probably the worst possible outcome out of this whole thing. Like, if we gotta figure it out soon. Like,
Yeah, you
I'm
had
really
2 chances to trade him. If you lose him for nothing after 2 years where you could have traded him, it's not a good look.
exactly, especially because he's been playing great now, so he's been raising that value along with Boucher. Like, if we lose him for nothing, especially after trading for Pascal, we're gonna get clowned. We're gonna get clowned as an organization. It's gonna be over for us. We have to trade him this deadline. I gotta put that out there right now. We have to trade Bruce Brown. And again, that's not because he's a horrible player and I want him off my team. It's just we need something for him before he walks for nothing. And we're just stuck there with our hands in our pockets, like, oh, we could have done something, but we didn't do anything while his trade value is high. Like he's been playing competitively, he's been hooping. There's no reason why he wouldn't have any value, especially from contending teams who are looking to get someone like a Bruce Brown.
Yeah, there's a lot of teams right now that could use a secondary creator and ball handler. I threw out the Detroit Pistons. They're a team that are in the playoff mix for the first time in a while. Jaden Ivey's out now. You see the burden that's on Cade Cunningham. I don't know what a trade or anything would look like with the Pistons and Raptors in that case, but that's a team. The Pistons also have a ton of cap space as well, but having that Bruce Brown to kind of take some of that playmaking load or secondary creation is something that's interesting. So I think there's definitely a market, like to your point, out there.
Mhm. Exactly. Yeah. And like, I guess we'll just have to see, going forward, getting into as the trade deadline approaches, what the Raptors are really going to do. But it really is a toss up right there because we're winning right now, and it's a good thing that we are winning. But then a lot of people are getting afraid because they're like, if we win too much, what was this season for? But again,
Yeah.
we don't know where we're going to land. We don't know what moves they're going to make. We can only judge about what happens,
Yeah.
not what is going to happen or what could happen. But yeah, like I feel like that's most of the stuff for this week. And the 905 boys been doing them thing. I know you've been seeing them hooping over there. Cody's down there right now, getting the first peak. But what you been saying for this week for the 905?
Yeah, look, the 905 have been balling. If you want to talk about winning for the most part, since the regular season has started, they're 7-4. They've been basically near the top of the G League or top of the Eastern Conference for much of this time. This last week, or last 2 weeks since we last talked, have been a bit more competitive or more even basketball for the 905. They're 3-2 at the time of recording, but they're also currently playing against the Long Island Nets for the second game in a row right now. So that'll obviously matter if they end up 500 over the next 2 weeks or they end up 4-2. We shall see in a bit. But the 905 have been a super competitive team. We've talked about it a lot in the sense that like guys are just they're more defined in their roles. There's not as much volatility in terms of who's coming in, who's coming out, who's starting this or that. They've been keeping it pretty even keeled. There haven't been that many injuries for the 905 either. The Raptors have been kind of keeping healthy as well, so that definitely helps. But the 905 have just been a super competitive team for the most part, and it's been awesome to see. And a big thing I wanted to touch on coming from this is Jonathan Mobo. He's been playing some really interesting hoops, and he had like basically his best game the other day against Long Island. It was in a loss after the 905 had won 3 games in a row, so that's unfortunate. But he had 19 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 blocks. Like there's been a lot of talk about him defensively and what he has to offer, but I've been seeing a lot of growth from Jonathan Mobo on offense. And I'm going to pull a Cody here and tease a little bit because I don't want to give away everything, but I'm working on a piece on Jonathan Mobo and what his time in the G League has been like. But I think a snapshot to give you guys is that he's just doing a lot more than he does at the NBA level. Like almost all of his baskets at the NBA level, for example, are assisted. Somebody has to set him up. Here, he's been able to do a bit more. He's in the post. He's kind of driving a lot more with his own dribble, and he's just taking a bit more advantage of his physicality and his instincts. I think Darko has mentioned it where he saw a couple 905 stints where he was like, Jonathan looks very aggressive, and we like to see that. We want to see him do more of that. Drew Jones has talked about it as well. So I think Jonathan Mobley is a player specifically where like he's getting all these G League reps and you hope to see something coming out of it. And you are. So that's a good thing. So that's been the big thing for him. And out of the Raptors drafted rookies, so Jacoby Walter, Jamal Shed, and Jonathan Mobo has by far spent the most time in the G League. So these reps have been really intentional, and I think that's been paying off for them, which is kind of something I wanted to highlight.
No, exactly. Like Mobo has been hooping in the on down there in the 905. He's looked really impressive, and even in that game, even though it was a loss, he was plus 11 in that game too, and
Yeah.
he's out there doing his thing. For me, I want to highlight. I know I sung his praises a couple weeks ago. Jamison Battle. Jamison Battle is someone again I didn't have my eyes on when the season first started. I was more focused on like the Kenley Chandlers and whoever else, but now that I'm seeing him, like he did have a rough game against the Knicks, but then he did bounce back this game, even though it was in a loss. He was 4 for 7 from 3. He had 18 points, 2 assists. But for him, I feel like his skill set and the way he's kind of found his role on this team could really help not just an overall NBA level team. He has the NBA skills to where he could definitely make an impact. He knows how to move without the ball. He knows how to get to his spots. He knows when to be aggressive, and his form, just shooting from 3, the ability to shoot as well as he is honestly the difference maker for me. And I truly believe if we call him up to the team, like he has a spot on this team. I don't know when, but I feel like Jamison Battle, his skill set should honestly earn him a mainstay on the Big Boys Club.
Yeah, look, if the Raptors do end up selling some of these vets off, I have like zero doubt in my mind that Jamison Battle is going to be one of those guys that's filling in those minutes that are now gone from those vets. Like he's just a poised player. And this guy has just all the confidence in the world. I talked about it in the game against the Valley Suns, which was a win for the 905. He did not have a great game. Very quiet shooting night. Wasn't able to find much of his offense, but he made 1 3 in that game. It was the most important 3. The 905's lead had completely dissipated, even though they were up by like 14 or 16 in the second half, even in the fourth quarter, I'm pretty sure. And the Valley Suns just went on a barrage of threes. They needed a response. Jamison Battle catches it above the break, doesn't hesitate, bangs a 3, even though he's had a quiet night, hasn't made a 3 to that point. That is just poise. That's a guy who is confident in his shot no matter what. He's not focused on any distractions. He doesn't let the ups and downs, the highs and lows of the game affect him that much. And that's something a lot of teams need, especially when it comes as a shooter. And that's something that the Raptors could absolutely use because we know they're not the most prolific three-point shooting team. And that's a positive to see, right? Like you said, he's been offering a lot more in terms of not just being a shooter. I've seen him do stuff where he's like sealing guys off and running to the basket. He's put the ball on the deck and made a couple passes. There was a play against the Suns that I vividly remember where he kind of drove from the right side, threw a skip pass to the corner to Jonathan Mobo of all people, who ended up drilling a 3. So like it's just all going back to like these guys are feeling empowered in these games to do things that they don't necessarily get to do at the NBA level. And you're seeing that they have the skill set to do it at least in small bursts.
Yeah, exactly. Too, like like you were mentioning too, even though he has a quiet shooting performance, I like that he like kind of lets his game come to him. He kind of doesn't let him if he's shooting poorly, he doesn't let that affect him, but he doesn't chuck up shots either. He's not like, okay, let me see if I can shoot out this slump. He lets the game come to him, and if he finds himself in the right spot, he's gonna take the shot with the confidence. He's gonna be like, nah, like I haven't been missing today. I shouldn't take this shot. No, he doesn't. And again, that's what you want to see if you're gonna make that jump from the G League to the NBA. Can you play your role and can you play it well? And do you know, like, do you have the shot selection IQ to know when to take those shots and to shoot it with confidence at least? But for me overall, like Jamison Battle has just been kind of my highlight these past few games.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, if you're one of those fringe guys trying to make an NBA roster, you need to have at least one really good NBA level skill. And I've mentioned this before. Jamison Battle has that. He is an NBA level shooter. He doesn't need to be warm. He doesn't need to like be in the game a ton. He's just going to be ready to go out there, let it
Mhm.
fly, and probably make a good amount of them. So I think that really bodes well. And then when he also starts adding things where he's able to kind of step out and defend a little bit, he's able to move around off the ball, on the ball, stuff like that. Like that definitely adds to it. And like I said, he's very likely somebody who's going to sop up those minutes if those bets do end up getting sold to the deadline.
Yeah, exactly. And then, well, I guess we'll probably see like where the 905 goes from here. They had a little up and down week, but they've been hooping so far this season. But going back to the Big Boys Club, looking ahead for the next week, they're playing 4 games. First is going to be up against the New Orleans Pelicans. Then they're going to go over to Washington, play the Wizards, come back home and play the Bulls, and then the Clippers. So, Zulfi, what are you looking forward to from this week from the guys? Are you looking for more winning or what's going on?
I was gonna say, look, if you're a fan or you're hoping for more tanking, I don't know if it's looking great for you if the Raptors are playing the Pelicans, the Wizards, and the Bulls. Like they could maybe rattle this 3 game win streak has a chance of getting up at least to like 5 or 6, which the Raptors have not seen in quite some time. So that'll be interesting. Oh, look, I don't really know how you sell anybody on a game against the Wizards or the Bulls. I mean, the Pelicans is interesting because they have some guys that might be moved. Who knows what's happening with Zion Williamson? Like, oh, what I'll say is like just let's see the defense. Let's see if the defense
Yeah.
can hold up and continue. We still don't really have an update on Immanuel Quickley since I last saw. So if he does come back, like that's going to be the biggest thing everyone's going to be paying attention to. Like if the defense completely just shells itself with Immanuel Quickley back on the floor, that's not. It's going to be hard to ignore it, right? It's going to become an elephant in the room almost. So that'll be interesting to see. The game against the Clippers should be fun. Norman Powell, it's always fun playing against a former Raptor. So we'll see what he's done. I think he's deserving of being an All-Star this year. We'll see if he actually ends up getting it, but that'll be interesting. But like, yeah, I think for the most part, you kind of want to see if they can sustain some of this stuff. And to this conversation about winning and losing, I think even if you lose a bunch of these games, if the process is there, if they're playing decent defense, like if you, as long as you're not getting shelled like 155 to like 98 or whatever, like in some of those other games, I think you live with the results either way.
Yeah, exactly. And like for me, at least looking at this week, I, they might go 3-1 here. Like they probably might go 3-1. Yeah, listen, you're
There's a
not
good
out.
chance.
You are not out tanking the Wizards. All right, they are
Yeah.
masters at this game. They will.
Like I said, the Raptors defense over this last 6 games has been top 3. They've been
Yeah,
elite defensively
yeah.
recently. And you can absolutely beat up on some of these teams that are not great on offense.
And this is what I was saying too. Like, if you look at the Raptors on paper, they should be nice defensively. Like, aside from Immanuel Quickley, we have the players, they have the frames and the builds to be nice defensively. So this is why I will say let the team grow. But again, like the Wizards were beating them for sure. Like Kuzma just came out today and said, like, I don't care what they're how they're trying to play. I'm gonna do my own thing. Like that that team is doing over
Kyle,
there.
you can say that all you want, but you've been having your worst season in like 6 years, buddy. Like doing whatever you want is averaging
He's like
14 and a half points a game. It's not looking great, Kyle.
the quote was so funny. It was just like, I don't know how they want to play. Like I don't fit in there, so I'm gonna do my own thing. Like
Ever since he trash talked the Detroit Pistons last year, it's all been downhill for him and the Wizards. Like it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. And yeah, I don't know. The
like
Wizards are in an ugly spot.
it was just so funny. I just woke up to that quote. I'm like, yeah, these, yeah. So it was 4 hours ago. He said, I think today I just decided to be myself and not really try to fit into everything that we're doing here. Just being more assertive, demanding the ball, not just going out there and trying to let people develop, just playing my game. And that's not Centel. That's a real report.
Oh my
Like, that's,
god.
that's a real report.
How is he like? What does he want? Because like no one's gonna want his trade value. Is the interest from other teams was already so low from what I saw in
Yeah.
terms of reporting. Now, who the hell would want Kyle Kuzma coming out of that situation? Like again, his numbers are the lowest it's been in a while, and maybe you can argue like, oh, oh, it's because he was being deferential and letting guys develop and this and that. But like, I don't know, if you are on the Wizards and your numbers are down when you are basically the first, second, and third option
Yeah.
in certain instances, it's not a good look. And then you say that, like, I don't really know what the end goal here is.
He's trying to get off the team. He's trying to get off the
Not
team.
doing a good job of it.
And I
They
guess
would
the
have
only
sold him anyways if he just played well.
I mean, like with that type of quote is kind of like a trade me quote. That's kind of like I don't want to be on this team anymore type quote. Like that was a wild thing to say, but I don't know who's gonna take him. Again, I guess the only other team like I'd look forward to playing this week is the Clippers. You know, Kawhi coming to his actual home. You know, coming back to where he should be. And Kawhi, Norm Powell. You know, get to see those guys hooping. But overall, just I guess we're winning this week. Like I don't want to jinx them, but I guess
I
we're
mean,
winning.
yeah. Hey, don't put anything past the Raptors. Like
Yeah.
they've had some ugly stretches this season, and some people may actually prefer that to happen this week. But if they continue playing like they had the last couple of days, it should be a successful week for them in terms of wins and losses. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah, but I guess if you don't have anything else to add, we can wrap up this week's episode. I want to thank you guys so much for watching and supporting the channel. Again, if you like this video, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, comment down below what you like, what you didn't like, if you want to see anything more out of us. And again, on the Raptors Republic channel as well as the website, we have so much interesting content, articles out there from amazing different writers, creators. You can go get your basketball licks in over there. And we will see you guys next week when we run it back.
Peace.